I would suggest colored pencils today, not highlighters. Colored pencils are going to be much better than highlighters today. Alright, so congruent polygons. Let's talk about that first. Polygons is a fancy word for shapes. We'll talk more about polygons, I think, in chapter 6. We really start talking about polygons. We're just throwing it in here for funsies today, because congruent triangles are a shape, and shapes are called polygons, so might as well just throw in all the words. Alright, what do we say congruent means? It means equal or the same, right? So here what that means is when we have congruent polygons or congruent shapes, I'd use the one in the back. That means that we have the same size. And we're going to have the same shape. Okay, it's really just like a copy and paste situation happening. We're just copying it, putting it somewhere else, seeing that everything matches. All right, next up we have corresponding parts. Corresponding parts. So we talked about corresponding when we were talking about angles. What did it mean for corresponding angles? How did you describe where two angles were if they were corresponding?
Look back if you need to. That would be on that. So looking what's foldable.
Foldable, or it's down here too. On this one. Yeah, it's where it's the same position. So corresponding means like it's in the same spot, it's in the same position. So corresponding, we're really thinking in this chapter that corresponding parts are like matching parts. So we're going to talk about that as matching angles. And we're going to talk about that as matching sides. So remember, we're talking about a shape here. We're not going to be talking about circles, 'cause all circles are not congruent necessarily. I'll take that back. Okay, but when we talk about corresponding parts, when we ask what parts are corresponding, we're looking between one shape and the other shape and seeing which parts match, which angles match, which sides match. Okay, we have one more word here before we get started on our practice. We have congruent statement. Okay, and a congruent statement is, making up this as I go, sorry, is where we have that congruent part. And it shows us how the shapes correspond. We'll talk more about that. But it's really important that when we read it, correspond. When we read it, it'll tell us which parts go with what in that congruent statement. Or when we write a congruent statement, we're telling the reader how those two shapes work, what matches with what. All right, you're going to be getting a sheet of paper. On the sheet of paper, there's 3 actual parts to it. we are going to be kind of cutting and gluing it one at a time. It just worked out better to have you guys cut it yourselves because surprisingly 10th and 11th and 12th graders, you guys can cut this. Amazing. Alright, so go ahead and finish writing in those words, and then you can go ahead and you're going to cut out the first part.
So if you notice, you've got kind of three. This first one with P, Q, R, this is one part. This number 2 is our second part. And then this last part asks us to write a 2-column proof.
So you're just going to cut them into that first chunk. Is that P, Q, R something? And you just cut that out. We'll cut the others later, but you're just cutting out that first little part. And you can go ahead and glue that in. For example, 1, I glued it on the left side. We're going to show some work on the right side. So we're cutting just this first part off. And we'll glue it right here on the left side. So share those glue sticks, share those scissors.
So glue that kind of off to one side so you have some space to show your work next to it. Put that glue up to the top.
Alright, give it about 15 more seconds. You're going to want this glued in. So share your glue sticks. You're going to glue that in. And this is the part where you're going to want you to not grab your colored pencils yet. Grab those colored pencils. I think there's 2 bags in that one. Yeah. They had 2 bags, but... Alright, in this problem, this is going to be our example number 1 if you want to label it, if that's important to you, that you label your examples as we go. Go ahead and label that number 1. In this one, we are going to identify our corresponding angles and our corresponding sides. So I'm going to write corresponding across the top here. And then we're going to do it in 2 separate parts. We're going to do corresponding angles. And we're going to do corresponding sides. And we're going to list out all the angles from this top that correspond with that bottom. And then we'll do the same thing with the sides. Alright, one thing before we get started, this P, Q, R, this is supposed to be S. It got a little cut off there, so if you want to fill in that S right there, that's supposed to be an S. Alright, I'm going to zoom in here real quick. So that way we can kind of just see this angle part. It didn't quite print out very nicely, so that's why we're going to use colored pencils. It also is going to help us match up. So if I look at angle P here has this one arc. So angle P from the top is going to be congruent to which angle on the bottom? Which one does it match up with? Which other angle has the same amount of those arcs? G, yeah. So P matches with angle G because these both have one arc there. Alright, then we go to a different angle. I'm going to just go to the one that has two. This is Q. Q has two arcs. I know it's kind of hard to see, so if you need to redraw them in, there should be two. Which angle down here has two arcs, or which ones would match with angle Q? Angle F, yep. So again, we're marking it up because I know it didn't show up really great on that printing. But angle Q matches with angle F. And go to R next. R has three arcs. Which one does angle R match with down here? Angle E. And then last we have that angle S is supposed to have four arcs, which can feel excessive. What is happening? And which other angle would be congruent to angle S?
So much. How much do I get?
Angle D, because we're gonna, what's going on over there? Because we're having a great day. Angle S is congruent to angle D. So those are our angles. I like to start with angles if we can see them. It's a little bit easier. Alright, now we're going to do our sides. So remember, for our sides, we show a side length. We go from one to the other. So for my sides, I'm going to start with P to Q. So I write that as PQ with a little line above it. And I'm going to say that that's congruent to. Now PQ had one tick mark there. Can anyone see, where does that one tick mark fall down here? Between G and F. So we know those are congruent, those are corresponding parts. Another way you can tell that is if you look at our angles that correspond, that side goes from our blue to our orange. So down here I'm going to match it up between our blue and our orange. Okay, if you want to mark that, you can, that this P and G went together. Those are my blue, Q, and F go together. Those are my orange. So as we go through and we match our sides, we really can look at it and double check, does it match the angles? Because as we go from one corner to the next, we're really connecting those angles. Okay, our next one that they have with the 2 marks is P to S, or SP. That's 2 marks there. I'm just doing this with a regular pencil now, rather than a colored pencil, otherwise it's going to get too colorful. Okay, do we want to call that PS or SP? SP is what I heard. Okay, S to P is going to be congruent to which line down here? D to G, yep. And does that correspond that S goes with D? And then it goes to the blue, P and G. So when we look at those sides, we're connecting the same colors. It's going from brown to blue, or blue to brown, brown to blue, blue to brown. Okay, next up, just the way that it's organized, I think the 3 is this one. So that's SR, or we could call it RS. What do you guys want, SR or RS? RS. So R to S, that goes from our green to our brown. What's that going to correlate with, correspond with down here? DE, good. Now when we look at this, the way that I wrote it, does R correlate with D? No. But even though I go from green to brown, is that going to be the same segment as brown to green? Do I get the same line?
Remember, if you think way back to chapter 1, when we name our lines, we can put those 2 points in different orders, and it's still the same line, or the same segment.
Okay, and then there's one more side we haven't named yet. This one actually has 4 tick marks. I know that's really hard to see. Last year, you even printed this out smaller. It was nuts. So here we have 4 tick marks. 1, 2, 3, 4. So what would I write for my congruent statement there? QR. Well, that was a weird looking Q. QR is congruent to EF. Nice job. Okay, and again, QR, we went from orange to green. And then we switched it around, and that's okay. We went from green to orange. As long as we have those same vertices that we are going between that match up. Okay, we have one last part of this problem before I move on to the next, and that's our congruent statement. So for our congruent statement, we're going to name the polygon and say what polygon it's congruent to. But as we name the polygon it's congruent to, we want it to match up with those corresponding sides. Alright, so for our congruent statement, we're going to name this polygon, and this one, it's a four-sided shape. We don't have a name for that quite yet in our vocabulary, so we're just going to call it a polygon. Remember, a polygon really means a shape with straight sides. Now, the first polygon, we can say it in whatever order we want. Doesn't matter. So, do we want to go alphabetical order? Do we want to go blue, orange, green, brown? It does have to connect. So, we can't go P, R, S, Q, because S and Q don't connect.
We have to start at one place and follow the line around. So where should we start? What point do you want to start at? P?
P? Okay, so polygon P. I'm going to color code this. I'm going to do blue, P.
We go Q or S? Okay,
Q.
so we're going to go P, Q, and then we'll have to keep going in that direction. So P, Q, R, S.
Now that one's kind of nice. It goes in alphabetical order, right? L, M, N, O, P, P, Q, R, S. Yeah. All right, is congruent to.
So this is the really important part. Now that first one we could start at any point and move around the figure. But now for our next one, we have to use the corresponding points on the other shape. So think about what would be the corresponding point to that P.
Yep, G. P and G corresponded. So G. Then we went to Q. So we went P to Q. Here we're going to go G to what? F. And then what? G, F, E. And then we'll end at D. All right, we have this next one we're going to glue in is this triangle one. We're going to glue that in if you have room at the bottom. Glue that in. You might trim it just a little bit so it fits a little bit better. You want just those two triangles. I think.
Let's just glue it in case we
Stupid.
do it.
All right, so you're gluing in that number 2.
Hi.
Hey. All right, again, we're going to be using some colored pencils. Here, I'm just going to use 3 colored pencils. So I'm going to do blue, green, and brown because those feel a little bit more together for me. But you pick what color. And you're gluing in just that one with the 2 triangles. Alright, so what we're going to do here is we're going to mark this up. We're going to show which angles are congruent, which sides are congruent to each other, based on our congruence statement. This is what's given to us. We're told these 2 triangles are congruent. They are, in fact, the exact same triangle. Do they look like the exact same triangle? Like, did I just pick this one up and drop it down? No, it might have like rotated a little bit or it might have flipped around. So that because of that rotation or that flip, looking at that congruence statement is going to be really, really important because that's going to tell us which part. So over here, I'm going to write that out. I'm going to write our given. Because guess what we get to do soon? Proofs. Not yet. but we will. Alright, for our given, we're given that triangle KLM, and I'm going to just write it a little bit bigger so that I can color code it. KLM is congruent to triangle IHM. So I'm going to start with my blue. I'm going to say that K is going to match with which other part over here?
You might not be totally sure. What's your guess? What will K match with? Will it match with the I, the H, or the M?
All the things. It's going to match with the first thing. So because it's in the first spot, it matches with the other thing in the first spot. We don't even need to look at the picture. We're not saying, okay, where does that match over here? We're not taking our best guess on that. We're basing it off of that congruent statement. It tells us for a fact here, K corresponds with I. So I'm going to do that one arc here with K. And because K corresponds to I, that means K is congruent to I. So I'm going to do that one arc with that I. Next, we have angle L. What is angle L going to correspond with?
So look for the angle in the same position.
H, because they're both the middle ones. Good. Both two arcs. So they're not necessarily the same as K, but they're same as each other. So L is the same as H. And then in this case, M matches up with M. Now the part where they touch isn't always the place where they match. In this case it is, because that's just the way the triangles are. But sometimes these won't match up with each other. Alright, so next what we're going to do is we will use those tick marks to mark up the sides. So I'm going to just, again, I go back to my congruence statement. Rather than picking something on my diagram, I like to pick out, I'm going to do KL. And those are the first two parts in that, KL. So what will KL match up with over here? IH, because it's the first two letters. KL with a tick mark. I could do 2 tick marks, 3 tick marks, whatever. Whatever I do for KL, I need to do for IH. And I'm just going to do 1 tick mark because it's just easier to think about it as 1, 2, 3. LM, what's that going to match with over here? HM. How? Because that's what they're matching. Yeah, it's the second and the third. LM matches with HM, or you can match the colors if you color code it. So L to M, we'll do 2 tick marks because it's different than the other one. But that's going to match with HM. So over here I'm going from H to M. And then we have one more side, and this one's kind of a silly side. It's when we go from the to the last one. So KM matches with IM. You got it. You're on a roll today, Ikra. So K to M matches with I to M. All right, we are going to stop there for our notes today.